But when you grew up in a working class area in the late 70s and early 80s, it was grim.
They weren't there to serve you. They were the law.
Spent half our lives getting chased by the police we all grew up on the Brockley Winds estate, the three of us, so we hung out together.
You were angry about something, but I couldn't quite tell what.
First got into band when I was about 11 years old. The first band I listened to was Sex Pistols, The Clash, sort of commercial bands. Someone gave us Little Towers to listen to. I was a young kid at school, and from then the band just spoke volumes to us.
Yeah, well, I joined the band in March 2006. First two gigs we did was Stockport was the first one, that thatched house. It was a warm-up on it.
Aye, and then Wolverhampton.
That was Birmingham, it was the Academy.
Birmingham Academy. You knocked your tooth out, didn't you?
Knocked my tooth out, aye. I went for it, you know, and bang. Well, rather than protect my face, I stuck my hands out with my guitar. I didn't want to break my guitar, you know. My face took the full lot of it. I just seen my tooth gone straight across the stage.
I think it could have been about 1990. He asked us to stand in for him in front of the band because he was having some time out for personal issues. I said I would try and stand in front of the band, but obviously it isn't the Upstarts without him. And at the time there was only one other original member, which was Decker Wade, the drummer. And some of the crazy things he's got up with Decker. He loves to take his clothes off for some reason, especially when he's had a drink. Played a gig one time we played in Spain, and he decided to do the gig with nothing on at all. And he played the gig, he played a blinding set, and then at the end of the gig he got off the drum riser, put his hands up and like bowed to the crowd and stepped back, but he didn't realise behind the drum riser there was no wall, and the stage was about 12 foot and he just disappeared.
Now, I cannot exactly remember the chain of events, but somebody said to us at some point when we're down in this studio where the bands are being filmed, come on, we're going to go and have a drink. And we said, oh, where? And they said, oh, in the BBC bar. And the BBC bar is like this legendary place. I realise now that a lot of people who worked at the BBC were not allowed to drink there. And I have no idea how, but me and my brother and Jim from Viz, we all ended up drinking with the Upstarts in the BBC bar overlooking the Blue Peter Garden. And the only other people in there were like a few proper old purple-faced guys with sort of white moustaches and blazers sitting in corners sort of drinking gin. And the Upstarts had with them this bloke who had a snake, like a live snake, wrapped around him. And he was just standing in the BBC bar with a snake wrapped around him, having a drink. And we didn't get chucked out. And I suspect that might be that they were too frightened to chuck any of us out. I have no idea. But it's a good laugh.
So we came out this day and it was snowing. It was just off Oxford Street. Little street. And it was snowing outside, so when we come out, sticks started throwing snowballs. So anyway, this big bloke come, he said, who threw that? I said, how mate, we're only throwing snowballs, you know. He said, he says, you're the one with the mouth, are you? I went, no mate, I says, don't want any trouble. He went, well, you've got trouble. Oh, he's a big old mush, and he took his coat off, took his rings off, took his watch off. I thought, whoa. He's not here to dance. So anyway, I done him the old Brockley Winds. You hear like them, we're rolling about in the snow. And upstairs, Jimmy Percy's getting interviewed with the managing director of Polydor. He says, how's the Angelic Upstarts getting on, Jimmy? He says, doing really well. He says, you're really going to like the album. He says,
doing really well, are they, Jimmy? He went, he goes, come here. Takes Jimmy to the window, and there's me and this bloke, right, rolling above him. He goes, isn't that the singer there? Jimmy went, oh, Jesus Christ. Jimmy come running down, you know. Separates her. He goes to shake the bloke's hand. He only tries to put the nut on me, so it all kicks off again. We're rolling about in the thing. So anyway, the cops come and everything, and they all got broke up. So I walks away, and I goes to my manager's office, which was in Grosvenor Street. 5 minutes walk. So I walks in, I'm all full of slush and everything, my knuckles are all thing, and I've got a black eye and a boss nose, and I'm sitting. He goes, what you been doing? I said, I had a fight with this bloke. He says, that wasn't a bloke. He goes, that was the head of security at Polydor Records. I went, was it? I says, what happens there then? He goes, we've been sacked. He goes, we've been sacked. I went, lovely, Tony. I said, will it be like the Sex Pistols? I says, well, we'll get £1 million. He goes, I'll tell you exactly what we'll get. He says, we'll get nothing. He goes, not a shilling. He says, we'll get nothing. I said, how can that be? He goes, misconduct. You blew it. You blew everything. You've ruined it for everybody. I was crying there. I thought, I finished the Angelic Upstarts. We hadn't started. I finished him.
I have a couple of recollections about the Upstarts. One in particular that I always remember. My brother Chris went to ask Mency if he would be photographed with a copy of Viz. This was when Viz was in its very infancy, and he basically took the opportunity whenever he could, as we all did, to get a photograph of a celebrity with a copy of your product to sort of show that it was cool, I guess. And Mency was the first person of anyone who was ever photographed with a copy of Viz who stopped my brother at that point and says, put your camera down for a moment, I want to look at this. And he flicked through it and he looked at every page, and as he was looking at every page he was saying to my brother, does the magazine have any political connections? Is there anything to do with right-wing politics in this? And basically he just laid down the law that he didn't want to be photographed with something with which he didn't agree. He stopped and thought about it. And so this just made me think about recently Ed Miliband being photographed with the Sun. And my brother said of that, you know, when Mency was just a young man and he was asked to be photographed with a copy of Viz, he went through every page of it in order to ensure there was nothing political in it that he didn't agree with. And you know, he was just a young, uneducated man at that time, and Miliband, leader of the Labour Party, just happily gets photographed with a copy of the Sun without thinking about it. And I think that goes to show that there was something behind the Upstarts in terms of their awareness. They were sharp, they were clever, and they thought about politics, which a lot of people at the time didn't.
I mean, the mosque's been there since the 60s, hasn't it?
It's the oldest established community in the country, the Yemeni community at Shields.
And there's never been a problem, and then we'll get all these toothless idiots, right, coming to me hometown, right, spreading a message of hate. And I thought to myself, I'm going to go down there and have a word with them, you know. I'm going to go down there and register my protest. And the police were making the presence felt. And a policeman said to me, he says, why don't you go home? I says, me, go home? I says, I am home. I says, these lot here are supporting the people who killed my granda a couple of 100 yards up the road there. I says, they dropped a bomb on them a couple of 100 yards up the road, and I says, you're telling me to go home? I says, I am home. I says, tell them to get out of me home. Tell them to get out of me town. They're not welcome. We don't want you. Get out.
What was the conclusion?
I got arrested. last year and this year has been probably the most emotional points for me as being in a band. In November last year, I lost my mum, and we had a show on the same night as I lost her. I lost her on the Saturday morning, and I decided to do the show on the Saturday night in Middlesbrough, and the whole crowd just carried us through the show and just picked us up and carried us through the show. It was amazing. And in the same show, it was like fate. My merch man Kev said, "There's somebody looking for you." I said, "Who?" She said she's the daughter of Little Towers. I couldn't believe it. I lost my mum. She probably lost her dad when she was very young, and she came to see us. She'd never been to a punk show in her life, and she came to see us, and she was telling us how the Angelics had carried her. It was amazing, and that was just a story that just all went into one, and I just sat, and it just all made sense why I had carried on that night, why she had turned up that night, and it was like 1977 to 2014, just all wrapped up in one, and it just all came out. That was a high point to me.
To 36, nothing changed and it made you sick. When I led the first parade, the spirits with the engine march back again. Once again, see them marching down, different faces from the same hometown, giving a pound and turn back round again. The red, keep the red, keep the red flag flying high. Keep the red, keep the red, keep the red flag flying high. 86 to 36, the river's dead just as host the ships. One and a net, the first parade, the spirits with the engine march back again. Once again, see them marching down, different faces from the same old town, giving a pound and turn back round again. When we get there, want the freedom of the city, we want jobs, we want to live it, we want to work. Keep the red, keep the red flag flying high. Keep the red, keep the red, keep the red flag flying high. Once again, see them marching down, different faces on the same old town, giving a pound and turn back